Over 1,000 years ago, long before Columbus, long before any Europeans set foot in the Americas, a civilization was rising in the desert southwest of North America. They built cities in the sides of cliffs. They constructed massive apartment complexes that would not be matched in size in North America until the 1800s. They tracked the movements of the sun and stars with such precision that their buildings functioned as giant astronomical observatories. They had no metal tools, no wheels, no horses, and yet what they built has survived for over 1,000 years. When Europeans finally arrived and saw what these people had created, they refused to believe that Native Americans could have built it. They invented theories. They blamed lost civilizations. They looked everywhere for an explanation, except the obvious one. The Pueblo people built it, with their hands, with their knowledge, with a sophistication that still astonishes scientists and archaeologists today. This is the story of the Pueblo people, one of the oldest and most remarkable civilizations in history of North America, and it is a story that most people have never heard. The name Pueblo comes from the Spanish word for village or town. When Spanish explorers arrived in the Southwest in the 1500s, they found people living in multi-story stone and adobe buildings and called them Pueblo people. But the Pueblo people had been there for thousands of years before the Spanish arrived. They're the descendants of the ancestral Puebloans, a sophisticated civilization that archaeologists once called the Anasazi. They lived across what is now New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, a vast region of deserts, canyons, and high mesas. The Pueblo people were not a single tribe. They were, and still are, many distinct nations, each with their own language, their own traditions, and their own identity. The Hopi, the Zuni, the Acoma, the Taos, the many Pueblo communities along the Rio Grande, all different, all connected by a shared heritage of extraordinary achievement. What united them was their way of life, their connection to the land, their sophisticated farming techniques, their remarkable architecture, and their deep, complex spiritual traditions that shaped every aspect of their existence. The most breathtaking achievement of the ancestral Puebloans was their architecture. Mesa Verde, in what is now southwestern Colorado, contains some of the most extraordinary structures ever built in North America. Cliff Palace, the largest cliff dwelling in North America, is built into the side of a massive sandstone cliff. It contains over 150 rooms and 23 kivas, circular ceremonial chambers. It housed hundreds of people. Think about what that means. Over 700 years ago, long before the United States existed, long before European settlers dreamed of coming to America, people were living in a multi-story apartment complex built into the side of a cliff, with running water systems, with ventilation, with storage rooms, living quarters, and ceremonial spaces. And Mesa Verde is just one site. Across the Southwest, there are thousands of cliff dwellings, great houses, and ancient villages, each one a testament to the intelligence, skill, and vision of the people who built them. Chaco Canyon, in what is now northwestern New Mexico, was the center of the ancestral Puebloan world. At its peak around 1,000 years ago, Chaco was a massive ceremonial and trading center. The great houses of Chaco, structures like Pueblo Bonito, contained hundreds of rooms spread across multiple stories. But Chaco was more than just a city, it was an astronomical observatory. The ancestral Puebloans aligned their buildings with extraordinary precision, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. The corners of buildings were aligned to capture the exact moment of the summer and winter solstice. Spiral petroglyphs carved into cliff faces served as solar calendars, marking the changing of the seasons with pinpoint accuracy. Without telescopes, without computers, without any of the instruments that modern astronomers rely on, these ancient people mapped the heavens with a precision that still astonishes scientists today.
How do you build a thriving civilization in one of the most arid environments on Earth? The Pueblo people figured it out centuries before anyone else. They developed sophisticated irrigation systems that captured and directed the precious rainfall of the desert Southwest. They built check dams and terraced fields on steep hillsides, slowing runoff and allowing water to soak into the soil. They mastered the three sisters, growing corn, beans, and squash together in a system of agricultural genius that maximized yields while maintaining soil health. The corn provided structure for the beans to climb. The beans fixed nitrogen in the soil. The squash shaded the ground, preventing moisture loss and keeping weeds down. They stored food in massive granaries, planning years ahead for droughts and bad harvests. Their food management systems were so sophisticated that they could sustain large populations through extended periods of drought. They traded across vast distances: turquoise from New Mexico, shells from the Pacific coast, copper bells from Mexico, macaw feathers from Central America. Chaco Canyon was the hub of a trading network that stretched thousands of miles in every direction. The Pueblo people did not just survive in the desert. They built one of the most remarkable civilizations the ancient world had ever seen, right in the heart of it. Around 1300 AD, something happened that changed everything. A great drought struck the Southwest. For decades, rainfall was scarce, rivers dried up, crops failed. The great cities of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, which had sustained thousands of people for generations, could no longer support their populations. The ancestral Pueblos made a difficult decision. They abandoned their great cities and moved south and east toward the Rio Grande River and other reliable water sources. This abandonment has puzzled archaeologists for decades. Why would people leave behind such magnificent structures? Why abandon cities that had taken generations to build? The answer, as it so often is, was survival. The Pueblo people were practical, intelligent, and deeply connected to the natural world. When the land could no longer sustain them, they moved, they adapted, they survived. And when they arrived in their new locations, they built again. In 1540, Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez Coronado led an expedition into Pueblo territory, searching for the legendary 7 cities of gold. He found no gold, but he found the Pueblo people and decided to subjugate them. For the next 140 years, the Spanish colonial presence brought devastating change to Pueblo life. The Spanish forced the Pueblo people to provide labor, building churches and Spanish settlements on top of their sacred sites. They banned traditional ceremonies. They confiscated ceremonial objects. They punished those who practiced their traditional religion. The Pueblo people endured, but their patience had limits. In 1680, a Pueblo leader named Pope organized the most successful Native American revolt in the history of North America. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 was a masterpiece of organization and secrecy. Pope coordinated warriors from dozens of separate Pueblo communities, speaking different languages, living hundreds of miles apart in a simultaneous uprising against Spanish rule. On August 10, 1680, the Pueblo people rose up. Within days, they had driven every single Spanish settler out of New Mexico, all the way back to El Paso, over 300 miles to the south. Over 400 Spanish colonists were killed. The survivors fled. The Pueblo people had reclaimed their homeland. For 12 years, from 1680 to 1992, they lived free from Spanish control. It was the only successful large-scale revolt against European colonization in the history of North America. When the Spanish returned in 1692, they came with a different approach. The forced labor ended. The open suppression of religious practices eased. The Pueblo people had demonstrated in the most definitive way possible that they would not be erased. The Pueblo people built cities in cliffs. They mapped the stars without telescopes. They farmed the desert without modern technology. They survived drought, Spanish conquest, and U.S. assimilation policies, and emerged with their identity, their culture, and their connection to their land intact. They are one of the most remarkable peoples in the history of North America, and their story deserves to be known. If this story amazed you, share this video so more people can discover the truth about the Pueblo people. Follow the page for more untold stories of Native American history. And tell me in the comments, which Native American tribe do you want to see next?